There's all kinds of people that are getting arrested all across the country for possession of a controlled substance, whatever that controlled substance might be. But the problem is that in an egalitarianism form of government, such as we have, when you go to Article 4, Section 2 in particular, what it says is it says the citizens in each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as the citizens in the several states. So, in other words, if there's an immunity, because that's what it is, you have an immunity to prosecution because you're in possession, right? It's not decriminalized because there's still statutes in the federal laws that say that you can't have drugs, but you are immune to it because the state has said, well, we're not going to prosecute. So it's not a privilege to have it; it's an immunity to have it, right? It's an immunity from prosecution because the state has said we're not going to prosecute, and as a result, you still can't have it in possession because that would be in violation of federal law. But the state has said we're immune. So when it says that the citizens in each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as a citizen in several states, then that means that in the state of Oregon now, you can have any drug at all. You can have possession of heroin. You can have possession of fentanyl. You can have possession of drugs in your personal use because that's what the state of Oregon passed as their law. And for that reason, the citizens of the United States that reside within the state of Oregon, they have an immunity to the possession of drug conviction or prosecution, which means that the citizens in each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as the citizens of several states. So if Oregon has an immunity to the prosecution of drug possession, then the state of New York can't prosecute for drug possession because that would be a violation of Article 4, right? Because if one citizen in one state has an immunity, you must extend that same immunity to all the other citizens all across the country. And so, that's where the dangerous nature of the states creating the laws comes into play, because now we have this irregularity, this disjoining of the nation, because we don't have equal laws that are spread across the whole country that make all men equal. Instead, we have one state that says, yeah, you get an indictment by a grand jury. This state says, no, you don't get an indictment by a grand jury. This state says that you can have drugs in your possession. This state says you can't have drugs in your possession. Alabama says you can't peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress grievances, but you can up in Michigan. So if we're going to have a nation where all men are equal, then that starts with the laws treating all men equally across the entire nation. That's what an egalitarian form of government is. That's why Article 1, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution says that all legislative powers vested in the Congress of the United States. Because the Congress in a federal government was supposed to create the laws. They would create the laws together as a group, and then they would federate them out to each of the regional governments for application and administration. That's what it means to be a federal government, is to create the laws collectively and federate them out for application and administration. That way, if you break a law, you would be breaking the same law that anyone else in the whole country would be breaking. And what's most important is then the judge who works for the state would be able to be neutral and unbiased because he doesn't work for the government entity that's seeking the enslavement. So if the laws are made by the central government and federated out to each of the states for application administration, then the law enforcement who works for the state and not the central government would be able to be neutral and unbiased in their investigation. Then the judge who's judging the case would be neutral and unbiased because the accusation would be coming from the United States of America in the violation of laws, but the judge would be able to say, I don't work for the United States of America, I work for the state. Now you have what's called the separation of powers that exists. So if the United States of America creates the laws, according to Article 3, that the trial of all crimes, with the exception of impeachment, shall be by jury, and the trial shall occur in the state in which the crime is said to have been committed. States don't make laws, because if they do, according to Article 3, in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. So if a state creates a law and becomes a party in a cause, the United States of America has jurisdiction, right? There's the separation of powers. So if the United States of America creates the laws, then the state is the judge. If the state makes the laws, the United States of America is the judge. There is the separation of powers. That's why the Constitution, Article 3, says that if the state creates the laws, become a party in the cause, then the Supreme Court of the United States becomes the original court of original jurisdiction. It's the trial court. They are the judge to determine it, because you cannot have the state be the same entity bringing the accusation and judging and investigating and the one that's profiting off the very enslavement of the individuals that they deem a criminal. So, if we want to understand the original intent of the Constitution, or the reason why any of the founding fathers wrote the Constitution the way that they did, we would go to the Federalist Papers, right? And that would provide indication as to their thought process and why they made the decision the way that they did. So we know that James Madison is the father of the Constitution. He's oftentimes called the father of the Constitution. We know that he wrote Article 3. So if we want to know why Article 3 says, in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction, if we want to know why he made that provision that way, well, let's find out what he had to say. So when you go to the Federalist, Circular number 10, New York Packet, November 23rd, 1787, the article is titled "The Union as a Safeguard Against Domestic Faction and Insurrection." And in the article, James Madison said, "No man is allowed to be judge in his own cause, because his interest would no doubt bias his judgment, and not improbably corrupt his integrity. With equal, nay, with greater reason, a body of men are unfit to be both judge and party at the same time." So a body of men makes up the state. That body of men cannot be both judge and party at the same time, according to our founding fathers, right? According to the very author and father of the Constitution, you cannot have the same body of men be both judge and party at the same time. Now, Alexander Hamilton also spoke of this in the Federalist number 78, and I'm going to butcher what he said, but he said that no man ought to be judge in his own cause. Therefore, they should not be judged in any case in which they have the least bit bias or interest. So Alexander Hamilton spoke about this particular issue in the Federalist number 78. James Madison spoke about it in the Federalist number 10. And we even have the Supreme Court in Martin versus Hunter's Lessee from 1816, I believe it was, that spoke about this and the biases and prejudices that occur when a state is the party in the cause. You guys are welcome to go out and read Martin versus Hunter's Lessee. Supreme Court of the United States talked about it.